Gordon, now that the crash site has been identified, the rush is on to find the black boxes from AirAsia Flight 8501. U.S. Navy ships are on location to help find this most critical piece of evidence in the search for answers to what happened to bring the plane down. The families of those who died in the AirAsia plane crash gathered to pray Wednesday at the Crisis Center at Surabaya Airport as search crews recovered bodies from the crash site in the Java Sea. There were 162 people on board when the plane went down in bad weather Sunday. The remains and a debris field were discovered about 6 miles from the last point of contact with the pilots and only about 100 feet deep into the water. Officials say sonar images have identified what appear to be large parts of the plane, but weather conditions are not ideal and strong currents are moving the wreckage. Divers are also continuing their search for more bodies and the plane's black boxes with the help of hundreds of U.S. sailors.
We are greatly saddened by the news.
It is still unclear exactly what happened and why. Some speculate the pilot may have caused a stall by trying to gain altitude too quickly. So far, the bodies of those recovered did not have life vests. Investigators say that suggests there was no time for passengers or the crew to sound the alarm. And some of the metal wreckage discovered had burn marks, which could suggest an explosion or a possible fire.
So once you have the debris, you look at it all. And fire stands out, explosion stands out. Was it ripped apart or was something else going on here?
The United Nations Security Council has rejected a Palestinian resolution that would have established a Palestinian state within a year, and it would have divided Jerusalem without negotiations with Israel. The failure was a blow to the Palestinian move to gain support from the UN for its bid for statehood. The resolution called for Israel to leave the West Bank by 2017. That's the area they won in the 1967 Six-Day War. Israelis consider it their biblical inheritance. The U.S. voted against the resolution. The military justice system is back in the spotlight after a new study says that reports of rapes and sexual assaults are on the rise. Some lawmakers think the prosecution of sexual assault cases should be taken away from the military chain of command. But those who want the military to keep jurisdiction say the report suggests victims are more willing to come forward. Caitlin Burke has that story.
Rapes and sexual assaults reported by military service members increased by 8% in 2014, renewing a national debate over how the military handles these cases.
I think the military is doing a much better job of making it a hospitable environment for somebody to come in and say, hey, I've been victimized by somebody.
We are here to say the military has not been able to demonstrate that they've made a difference, and they need to be held to the scrutiny and that standard.
Pentagon officials say the military has made real progress. The total number of victims saying they faced unwanted sexual contact fell from 26,000 in 2012 to 19,000 in 2014. But there's a concern that 62% of female victims say they faced repercussions for reporting the assaults.
This isn't going away. We are never going to stop fighting for the men and women who serve in the military.
Senator Kirsten Gillibrand has been pushing for reform of the military justice system and for transferring the authority to prosecute sexual assaults out of the military chain of command. But opponents of her plans say that won't bring the change they're looking for. Brian Buffard is a former Navy JAG attorney, and now he practices as both a civilian and military defense counsel. He says many of the military's sexual assault cases that he sees aren't what the public may expect.
It's not one of those, jump out of the bushes, stranger rape scenarios. It's something where it's very much he said, she said. There are bad decisions made maybe on both sides. There's a ton of alcohol. You don't see those cases prosecuted very often in civilian court at all.
The 2014 defense authorization included additional steps to address sexual assault in the military. And Senator Gillibrand plans to continue to push for tougher guidelines when it comes to trying these cases. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Latinos in the U.S. are expected to triple in size by the year 2050, and by then they could make up nearly 30% of the population. It's one reason why so many denominations are focused on Hispanics as a key church growth area. It's also why a young Latino preacher in D.C. is drawing attention with his cutting-edge ministry. Heather Sells brings us that story.
La Biblia dice que la voluntad de Dios es buena, agradable y perfecta.
He's just 25, but already Josue Urrutia is an experienced pastor and rising star in the rapidly growing Hispanic evangelical church.
God has spoken to me about a pastoral calling all the way as far as I can remember, maybe 5 years old, but I planned for it to be something down the road.
But God had other plans. At age 19, he called Josue into the ministry to start a very different kind of Hispanic church.
We wanted to merge both a church that was relevant to the new generation, but as well kept the values of the traditional and the older generation.
The church that he's raising up it's different than the traditional Hispanic church. Number one, it's not a Hispanic church. It's multicultural, led by a Hispanic.
I believe that the fact that we're a Hispanic-led church doesn't limit us to reaching Hispanics. I believe that the kingdom of God in heaven will look very multicultural.
Urrutia hopes his church will influence leaders in the nation's capital and beyond. His plans already include expanding to Baltimore.
A few years ago, it was just a Bible study group, and now it's one of the fastest growing Hispanic churches on the Northeast. And it continues to grow. I think he'll be a megachurch pastor very, very soon.
Urrutia has won praise for reaching young adults who want nothing to do with church. He says you can't label his generation, it's too diverse. He hopes, however, to serve as a bridge, linking established voices in the church with new ones, all for the sake of the gospel. Heather Sells, CBN News.
The Bible tells us to give, and believe it or not, doctors now agree. Overwhelming evidence proves generosity is good for your health, from preventing cancer and heart disease to building self-esteem. Lori Johnson has the story.
The facts are clear. Givers live longer, happier, healthier lives.
Several recent studies show generosity triggers a number of significant changes, all good, both mentally and physically.
Here at the world-renowned Cleveland Clinic, Dr. Michael McKee develops ways to enhance the inner healing response of patients.
There are tremendous health benefits to giving.
Stress leads to illness, and Dr. McKee says giving can reverse the deadly effects of stress. It doesn't matter whether you give time or money, or if it's to a loved one or complete stranger.
Well, we know that the giving tends to reduce blood pressure, slow heart rate. Again, giving reduces stress. It reduces depression.
Researchers from the National Institutes of Health studied MRIs of people who gave to various charities. They found generosity stimulates the reward center in the brain, releasing chemicals that strengthen our immune system.
And we know again that there's a release of endorphins. These are the kind of magical chemicals that come from various areas in the brain, and they flood throughout the system. They're cousins, basically, but some reduce pain, some kind of seek out sick-looking cells and exert a healing effect on them. They have many different positive effects.
Dr. Stephen Deutsch is the chairman of psychiatry at the Eastern Virginia Medical School. He says doctors commonly use giving in treating depression.
We encourage people to not be so self-absorbed and to think about others. We even tell people to practice being concerned and invested in other people.
He says the more people give, the easier it gets.
Sometimes they may feel initially that it's fraudulent, that's not really who they are, but over time it becomes more and more comfortable for them, and it does have a powerful therapeutic effect.
So people who feel powerless or worthless find a new purpose and value by seeing their actions help others. And they tend to live longer and healthier lives. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
ISIS has killed nearly 2,000 people in the past 6 months, many of them civilians. The Reuters report comes from a watchdog group, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which is based in the United Kingdom. The group says ISIS fighters killed about 1,100 civilians in Syria, including 900 members of a Muslim tribe that fought against them. It also executed journalists, activists, and civilians who violated Islamic law. It even killed 116 foreign fighters who joined their cause, but then tried to go back home. In the Philippines, at least 53 people are dead and many others missing after Tropical Storm Jangmai hit the island country. The storm made landfall Monday. It triggered deadly flash floods and landslides and packed winds of 40 miles an hour. At least 13,000 people were forced to leave their homes. Just last month, Super Typhoon Hagaput killed 18 people in the Philippines and caused more than $100 million in damage. You can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website, cbnnews.com.